Hello, and this is a story from the Tales of Godhome by Thorskegga Thorn. She has written 3 books, each filled with 9 tales of the gods as children. So we have the Children of Jord, the Children of Norse, and the Children of Loki. This is the first story of the Children of Jord, and it's called The Goat Elf. Thor scowled at the hefty book of names that lay on the mess board before him. He was bored. The sunlight glinting through the thick glass of the window made him wish he was outside. At the other end of his mother's roomy house, his 6 sisters were gathered about a loom, watching the weave of weird. His mother was watching closely over their learning, so he stole away from the book and chose to play at his best-loved game, hunting. The iron spit made a worthy spear. He took it up and grasped its sooty shaft with both hands. Now the hunt was on. With a soundless tread, he crept across the sun-speckled kitchen. The upturned wash tub beckoned to him as a mark for his spearing, and with a quick, strong thrust, he made his kill. The lathes of the wash tub shattered at the blow. Flying splinters rang on the carefully heaped cooking pots and pottery dishes on the shelves above. They tumbled down with a deafening din. "Oops," muttered Thor, as pot shards rained like hail about him. The neckband of his shirt was grabbed by a strong grip. The angry Oswife pulled her son up onto the board where she held him fast by his shoulders. "What are you doing? Why are you wrecking my house?" she cried harshly, her eyes blazing. "I'm sorry," Thor muttered. "I was hunting." "Hunting?" said Jord sternly. She gazed down at the twisted spit iron lying on the floor, following the path of her son's mind-woven deed. "So, had enough of book learning, have you? Learnt it all, have you?" "I think so," the child answered edgily. "So, what is wormwood called among the elves?" "Mind fog." "How many eggs does the sea lay?" "Up to 3. "What rune of the Etins wards against madness?" "Ironstone Cliff." "Then you have worked hard and thoroughly at your reading," the goddess said more softly. "Would you like me to foster you with a hunter while your sisters fulfill their learning?" "A hunter? I would like that very much." "Then make some bread and seethed deer flesh for our next meal, and do it well, and I will take you to a hunter after we have rested." "I have broken the bread trough." "Then I will splice it together first. Bring me the shards." Thor pulled the thin shards of the wooden bowl from the wreck. His mother matched the bits together and sang over them, spelling the troth back together. Thor worked hard at his chores, and Jord fulfilled her undertaking with the household after the household rose from sleeping. She pulled on a leather frock and mantle that she wore when wayfaring among the folk of Middlegarth, and told Thor to attire himself in a like way. They set out far into the eastern hills. While they were crossing a flat hilltop, a glistening light in the wind-blown grass held Thor's gaze, and he stepped over and picked up a glinting thing in his fingers. It was a mannequin with shield and sword worked in heavy gold. More of the trinkets lay about his feet, half buried in the tangled grass. "What are these?" he asked. Jord looked on a little mannequin. "They were for a game. They belonged to your kinsman." Thor hardly dared to breathe. Jord had never spoken of any other folk of his kin before, and he wished that she would go on. He was not let down. See, this is where we lived before the dark mood came upon me. Dear Fjorgyn, the lord of the land, the shiplord of the seas, and your own father, Mundulfari, the lord of the sky, they were my lovers, and there was much happiness here. She was still attired, and after a while Thor asked, "What happened to them?" "I became wild, and to my everlasting sorrow I drove them away. Your father is dead, my son, slain by his own wife." Jord looked into her son's eyes and met his worried gaze. "I have taught you all that I know, which is good and wholesome for you to know, in the hope that you will spend your strengths better than I ever did. Think on this, if nothing else. Never do a deed in anger. Never let darkness overtake you." "I will not forget," said Thor wholeheartedly, still startled by his mother's astounding tale. "That is why you have 6 sisters wise in the ways of weird. They will help you when the forward tides seem unsettled. When you come into your strength, you should be loved and not feared." Thor knelt down in the grass and gathered up the golden men, craving not their worth in gold, but the link to his unknown kin. "I will keep them." "I want to keep them, to keep in mind all we have lost." "That is fitting," said Jord. "I shall look after them for you." Jord kept walking to the east. She had not taught her children spellcraft, so Thor thought nothing of the long wayfaring, but his maw was beginning to grumble with hunger when they at last reached their goal. "Now, do not forget," Jord warned him as the hunter's house came into sight. "Speak nothing of your knowledge of iron, cloth, or glass. These folks are not yet ready for such wonders." "Yes, mother." They strode up to a longhouse of unmarked logs. Its walls and roof were spread with mud, which in places was thick with glass, with grass. Smoke drifted from its gables. Jord knocked on the shelter's wall with her staff. They heard startled words from within before the leather door hanging was tugged aside. A man with a greying, short, black beard and long hair pulled back at the thong and peered at them. Noting a mother and child, he waved them within. On either side of the smoky long hearth were 2 wide benches where the household both sat and slept. The hunter's wife and son looked up at the guests with great heed. "What brings you here?" the hunter asked. "I came to trade," Jord answered. "My son here needs to learn to hunt, and hunt well. He is willful and strong and will not be a burden to you." "Trade, you say?" The hunter looked keen. "What do you offer?" Jord held out a heavy leather bag, which the hunter took and opened with great care, and it was filled with salt. "That is a good trade," the hunter nodded happily. "I will teach your son. How long will you leave him with me?" "I will come back from time to time and see how his skills are bettering," Jord answered. "If all goes well, he can stay with you until he reaches his man-tide." The hunter nodded his willingness, keen indeed to add another spear arm to his household. The hunter named himself as Vingnir, his wife as Hlora, and his son as Meili. Jord hugged Thor when she took her leave, saying, "Heed him well, my son, and learn all you can." Vingnir was true to his word and taught the young Thor all he knew about casting spears, making weapons, tracking, cutting up the kills and crafting the hides. He was greatly taken by the child's strength and quickly understood that nothing was beyond Jord's son's skills. His own son, Meili's, his mood was wrought in an unlike way. Overblessed in care and fearful of blood, he would never make a good hunter, but the 2 boys were soon steadfast friends. Before long, Vingnir was happy to trust Thor to make hunting trips on his own, and the Osling was gladdened to be trusted with the work. The first time that Vingnir stayed at home, he shooed the 2 boys out together, hoping that some of Thor's inborn skills would rub off on Meili. Thor scrambled heartily up the rocky hillside, with Meili struggling to keep up behind him. His eyes swept the slopes for any hint of deer kind, and to his glee he spotted the white rump of a hill goat stepping above them. Calling to mind Vingnir's rede, he took heed of the wind's way and kept low, creeping slowly to keep from scaring the game. Slowly and carefully, he edged into the killing stead, gripped the spear shaft, drew it back, and let fly. It was a clean kill, and the goat dropped without a sound. But the young goatlings, who had been hidden by the gorse, bleated in fear. Stirred by the deed, Thor ran forward, fetched and claimed the spear, and pulled the heavy goat onto his shoulders. He looked forward to running back to Vingnir's hut, full of pride from the kill, but Meili's eyes, awash with tears, stopped him in his tracks. What is wrong? Asked Thor, worried for his friend. The little ones, Meili wailed. You're going to leave them to die. They are too small to bother with, Thor said. But nothing is for naught. A fox will hunt them, or an ern, maybe. Meili howled louder. Thor could not think how to soothe his friend. He looked down at the youngling goats as they stood near his feet, too little to be fearful of menfolk, and bleating hopelessly up at their dead mother. I will see if the land wights will look after them, Thor thought aloud, and strode off to a boulder that glowed in his sight with the elf mark. He rapped on the rock with the spear butt. The sobbing Meili and the ever-bleating goatlings followed behind. In Elfhome, a door opened, and a landwight stepped out. Thor saw her as a short woman with thick white hair tumbling from her head and the horns and hairy legs of a goat. Meili could only see the stone. I need a boon, Thor said to the elf. Would you take care of these goatlings for me? If you do, I will yield any fee that is fair. I shall be happy to help you, Jord's son. I am in need of your help. The spring that rises above our home has been addled by a troll wife. Maybe you can drive her away. I shall strive to do so, Thor answered. See, Meili, this kind elf will look after them for us. Meili howled even louder at this. You are making fun of me. There is nobody there. Thor sighed and turned again to the landwight. Can you let him see you? No, the elf answered. He is a death-born child and lacks the sight. She smiled at Thor's growing helplessness and said, Prick your finger, Jord's son. Baffled, Thor did as she asked. With a thorn plucked from a gorse bush, the elf stepped forward and wiped the blood away on her finger and wiped it over Meili's lips. Then she bent down and let the goatlings lick off the leavings. She coaxed the tiny goats closer, and they latched hungrily to her breasts. Meili yelped, hurting, and Thor held him close, deeply worried. Meili gasped a while, as if from a hard run, but the tears had stopped, and he was now smiling. I'm sorry I mistrusted you, Thor. He spoke happily. I can see her now, and I trust you if you say she will take good care of them. And now we need to settle her fee, said Thor, much soothed that his friend was both heartened and hale. Come, Meili, we have some more hunting to do. He raised a hand in thanks to the elf, and with the hill goat still hung about his shoulders, he led the way further up the fellside. A tiny stream trickled down from the cliffside above, and it was that they followed until the way was blocked by stone. Even now, Meili could see the elf mark. A glowing band showing a door between the worlds. Thor shoved his spear shaft into a crack in the rock and heaved the door open. They stepped into a deep hollow which smelt thick and rank. There was a heap of old hides in a nook, and within it the troll wife stirred. Red-rimmed eyes glared at them, hard as flint. Her rough hair was decked with horns. Her mouth was sharp with tusks. "Oh, bothers me," she grumbled. Thor stepped towards the trollwife, his spear held ready. "I am Thor, Jord's son. I want to know why you have addled the spring that flows through your hollow." "Why?" "For my life is sorrow, and it gladdens me if others share that sorrow." "Then you will die," said Thor. "No," said Meili. "Wait, look at her leg." Thor looked and saw a huge splinter of wood buried in her calf. The flesh about it black and gloss. The sick limb lay in the spring. No wonder the water was foul. "See," said Meili, "she cannot help it. She must be in a fearful woe." Thor looked on the trollwife with loathing. "How were you wounded?" "Why should it worry you?" she started. "The goats fought, the earth shook, and Mundulfari's fire split the tree under which I sheltered. My mood has been dark ever since." "I want to help you," offered Meili, "if you will let me." He stepped up to the fiend and tried to pull the splinter free, but it was stuck fast. Thor laid down the goat lich and came forward to help. With much striving, he pulled the splinter out. With a short-lived shriek, the trollwife swooned. The wound was foul and stank. "Run home, Meili," said Thor, "and bid your mother brew up a hide of boiled wormwood water as strong as she can make. Then bring it straight back here." Thor washed the wound again and again with spring water that rose above the trollwife's bed, as bright and good as water can be. When Meili came back, they washed it again in the wormwood. In truth, the flesh was beyond any healing that warts could work. But, spurred on by his friend, Thor willed the trollwife to be healed, and the strength of his will worked the healing. When he was done, the wound was clean, closed, and hale. They left the trollwife to sleep, and a spring ran clean and sweet through the hollow. Not long after that hunt, Jord came to see her son. After greeting Vingnir and his kinfolk and sharing a cup of hot heather water with them, she led Thor away from the house so that they could talk alone. "What have you been doing that has sprung new threads on the web of weird? Your sisters tell me that you have won a kinsman." "A kinsman?" Thor said, bewildered. "Yes." Jord held her son's shoulders tightly. "Has nothing uncanny happened lately?" "Well, I had a great hunt the last time we went out," Thor answered with broad grin. He spoke at length of his first lone hunt and his meetings with the elf wife and the troll woman. He left out the goal of Jord's heedfulness, but not seeing it worthy of telling. Jord leapt into the gap in the tale. "So, Meili can see the elf folk. How is this? The elf woman told me to give him a drop of my blood. Oh, Thor. Oh, she sighed. You must be more careful. Only give such a gift to folk who are as close as kin. For now, Meili is a brother to you. He was already a brother to me, Thor answered. Then thought, dwelling on the fearful warning that Jord had given him after he had found the gaming men in the grass. I think that as long as I can hold Meili as a friend, I will never let the darkness overwhelm me. His love is deep, even for those he does not know. Maybe you are right, Jord sighed, suddenly weary. Did my sisters see any harm in my deed? No. So your inborn feelings may be right. Jord held her son close, ruffled his long, blood-red hair, and made her way back across the hills. The tides went by, and Thor and Meili both grew an inch in height. Thor now hunted alone for the household, while Vingnir and Meili carved handles from stag tines and horn for trading. Whilst tracking a fallow deer, Thor's path took him close to the goat woman's stone, and he knocked upon it and asked how she fared. The elf leapt out with two almost fully grown he-goats beside her. "Aha, Jord's son," she cried. "Your coming is well timed. Your goats are eating grass and warts now, and you can care for them yourself." "My goats?" said Thor, baffled, as the goats butted him in a friendly way. They were like no other goats he had seen. Their hair shone a ghostly white. Their hooves struck sparks from the stony ground, and their eyes were filled with a deep, knowing wisdom. "I hope you do not mind that I named them," she added. "They are called Gaptooth and Cracktooth." Thor smiled at the goats' friendly mood and stroked their silky hair. "You have my thanks, elf wife. You must let me know if I can be of further help to you." "Think on me," was all she said, and stepped back through the stone door, which melted away behind her. 1,000 hunts came and went, and young Thor grew until the first thick hairs of his beard grew upon his chin. The goats followed him everywhere and paid him close heed. Jord fared back as she had undertaken to do, and thanked Vingnir for his teaching and gifted him a further bag of salt. Jord drew her son aside and said, "You have reached your mantide. It is time for you to leave this stead." "And Meili also?" "If that is what you wish." "It is." "Then let us speak to Vingnir." The dwelling had been much lengthened since Thor first came. 4 young men had joined the household to learn carving from Vingnir, with Thor to win him meat, hide and horn. He had become quite a craftsman. Vingnir was deeply sad to lose Thor's help, but his young learners swore to him that they would go hunting in his stead. Vingnir and Hlora were of like mind that Meili should leave with Thor, as the 2 lads had become as close as brothers. Both young men hugged their elders fondly and swore to fare back when they could. Jord led them back over the hills to her longhouse. Thor was thrilled to see the sisters that he had not seen since he had broken Jord's dough trough so long before. 6 young women gazed on their brother with heedful and lusty eyes. Urd and Verdandi, Skuld and Saya, Frigga and Sibyl. Jord laughed and knocked with her walking staff on the stone floor to break the mood. That is enough of that. I can see I'm going to have to keep you away from one another for a while, or the longhouse will be overrun with younglings. Meili was staring at everything in awe. The glass windows, the gleaming brass dishes on the kitchen cupboard, and the wonderful soft clothes that the comely young women were wearing. Frigga saw his heedfulness and offered to teach him to weave, which gladdened him greatly. The kinfolk were soon settled about the long mess board, tarrying over a rich meal to mark Thor's homecoming and to welcome his new brother. The goats lay happy on the sun-warmed flagstones below the window and chewed at a rich heap of warts. Frigga asked Thor, "Why not make a cart for your goats to pull?" "That is a thought, sister," Thor owned. "What do you think, Gaptooth? Cracktooth?" The 2 goats gave a deep, gladful "ah" and went back to their feeding. Soon after, Jord taught Thor and Meili how to make wheels, hobbed and rimmed with iron. The 2 friends worked hard to craft a heavy wagon, its end posts richly carved and its sideboards gleaming with sheets of polished brass. Once the wain was wrought, Thor was keen to harness the goats. Jord halted him, saying, "It is not ready yet." For a watch, she sang spells over the wagon, and then let her son have his fun. Thor heartily harnessed the goats and jumped up beside Meili. His mother smiled and said, "If you will, they will take you over heaven's span." "I do will it," Thor laughed with gladness. "Hang on, Meili." Jord's son shook the halters and the goats ran forward, their hooves striking sparks from heaven's road as they pounded up into the sky. The wain's fairing made a deafening rumble. "It seems he has come back louder than when he left," sighed Frigga. "He is that," their mother laughed. "My thundering offspring is well named."